Hey everybody, Brian Von VA here, back at it again with another set of D&D stories. Today, we're going to be talking about golden calves that need to be killed that are in D&D. If you have one you'd like to share, please put it in the comments below. In this game, there are a lot of golden calves that have persisted throughout many, if not all, iterations of this game. The 6 base stats: Strength, Dexterity, Constitution, Intelligence, Wisdom, and Charisma. Spell slots. D&D has killed a few sacred cows before. For example, one that was killed in 5th edition was making paladins not only no longer needing to be lawful good, but also no longer even needing a deity. This was a huge change from a past edition that most people seem to agree only made the game better. So alright, with examples out of the way, what do you think we need to finally kill off so we can move on to a better and brighter future? What do you think is a golden calf that's only holding the game back for this generation? Spell scrolls. More specifically, the fact that spell scrolls can only be used by classes who already could have cast the spell is pointless. Here's an edit. People don't seem to get it. If the cleric dies, the wizard won't be using the resurrection scroll. Just like the fighter isn't using bless or the rogue isn't dimension dooring away, because, guess what? None of those people can cast those spells in the first place. As far as 5th edition is concerned, natural language and rulings, not rules. Use tags and hard-coded consistent language. In Pathfinder, you look up the rules in the book. In D&D 5th edition, you look up the rules on Twitter. Yes! I want to scream consistent language! Spells are awful for this. Every spell needs to be read front to back, skipping 0 words. Many spells are paragraphs long. You have to do this because any partial phrase can change the entire meaning of the spell from what you'd assume. Every spell is organized differently. I desperately want spells to be formulatic. You know, like spells. And if they have special properties or features, call them out after. There are tons of simple spells that mix up where their special features are in the description, and I often miss them, especially as the DM when I haven't been memorizing my small list of spells. I usually have to speed read a spell when a player casts it. The Daylight spell is a perfect example. It's called Daylight, and creates light. So one might reasonably assume that the created light counts as sunlight, since that's what daylight is. Oh, but no, it does not. How can you figure that out? Well, you have to read an entirely different spell, either Dawn or Sunbeam, to see that sunlight is called out explicitly. From there, you can deduce that since daylight does not explicitly say it's sunlight, it's not. And even then, Dawn and Sunbeam both have a sentence at the end to designate this. The light is sunlight. However, the spell Sunburst does not. It calls out its sunlight by starting out the spell description, "Brilliant sunlight flashes in a 60-foot radius." I have no idea how anyone is expected to get this correct on their own, since it's impossible to figure out the correct answer by reading the spell description. You just have to already know the answer, or have memorized the description of every other spell. Magic items are also not immune to this. They have the same problems. For example, the Bag of Holding does not specifically say the space inside is extra-dimensional or planar, but Handy Haversack does, and it calls out Bag of Holding as an example, which just hurts my head. That the game is supposedly designed for a party with no magic items. This is very amusing, especially when Lost Mines of Phandelver gives magic items to players super early. The advice, uncommon magic items at level 5, is weird when LMOP gives +1 longsword and staff of defense at like, I don't know, level 3-ish, then all the stuff in the actual mine. By the end of the campaign, the level 4 to 5 party has 2 uncommon and 3 rare items. And the Staff of Defense and the Spider Staff are a bit more powerful than equivalent staves because they don't have the standard limitations. Dunno how they didn't errata that adventure after writing the Player's Handbook and the Dungeon Master's Guide. Also, you've got Fizzbands with those magic items that level up for killing a young dragon, not adult, young. I embraced it, and now my martial characters have Fizzband dragon weapons. They feel like actual fantasy characters now, and the players love it. Yeah, I know some people don't love magic items, but I 100% believe you should give them early and give martial characters powerful ones, while casters can enjoy more utility ones. Bonus points for things with charges to give martials that caster resource feeling. Attrition of resources over multiple encounters in a day as the main balancing mechanic. The game is designed to be run in a way that almost no one follows because most people don't actually want to play that way. Most of the time, people want 1 or 2 encounters in a day, not 6 to 8. So just balance everything around single encounters. Or even do the opposite thing and double down on the design, a la, this is what the game is, and if you don't want to play that, then you don't want to play this game. Honestly, this is what they should have done. Right now, 5th edition is shit for anything that isn't dungeon crawling, because it's balanced around attrition. It's also shit with a capital S for dungeon crawling because it has spells which break that experience. No rules for dungeon crawling, shit items and no exploration, and overland travel rules worth the ink they are printed in. 99% of the stories people tell in 5th edition are better for Dungeon World, and story like dungeon crawling is better in Pathfinder 4th edition and 3.5. But given WotC keeps releasing adventures that don't even try to adhere to attrition-based gameplay or expedition-based gameplay, it seems not even they want to use what the game is designed for. The attack action as the main method of attacking with a weapon. RPG video games pretty universally feature abilities that martial characters get, which replace the attack action. I'm not using attack, I'm using Mortal Strike, Rupture Tendons, Flurry, Battering Ram, Shield Bash, or any number of other martial techniques from any number of RPG games. Using a straightforward attack is what you might do at level 1 when you don't have anything better, or when you're out of resources or otherwise limited by the nature of the fight you're in, or the length of the adventuring day. Why hasn't D&D followed suit? Charm saves still being wisdom-based when charisma gets described as strength of personality. Yeah, okay, I can agree with that one. Druids with a metal armor restriction, yet sickles, scimitars, and daggers are fine. Oh, and of course shields. But what about studded leather? Even in lore, druids of, I hope I don't butcher this, but Maliki don't give a shit about those restrictions, and they wear metal. I played a kobold wildfire druid who worshipped Kossuth. He wore mismatched pots and pans as armor, and when asked about it, he said volcanoes spit out metal and you dig it up out of the earth. It's all blessed by Kossuth's flame when it's formed and forged. And you know what? The game didn't explode. The play culture that thinks D&D is basically a completely generic game that should do non-D&D stuff as well as D&D stuff. The spellcasting system needs a complete rework. The level system is a clunky mess. It's full of trap options and the occasional game-breaking one. It doesn't do a good job at making casters feel particularly unique or magical. It fundamentally unbalances essentially all future design in a bad way, and, in a large part, is why there's a martial caster divide at all. The multi-classing system is similar. D&D would be better off if it committed to actually being a classless system with packages of feats or features and abandoned the idea that classes had any in-world relevance. It would also be better off if it leaned into classes as diegetically real things and provided players with more options for differentiating between characters of the same class. That martials have to be bound by real-world constraints or physics. It's absurd in a fantasy game that many people still argue something that their flabby, untrained bodies can't do. So, obviously, that level 5 fighter can't do it either. Let them be actual action heroes or figures from myth by letting them do fantastical feats and deeds. Stop constraining the martials to the mundane and let them be fantasy characters. I've been playing D&D since BECMI, circa 1988. It has been some of what was listed here, like paladin equivalents for other alignments, broader alignments, and no multiclassing. A lot of the ideas have been tried in other RPGs going back even before my time. I'm not one of those D&D fanatics who gets upset by change either. House rules have always been a feature of RPGs. I would suggest, instead of keeping the name D&D and warping it far from its roots, that you look at and support other gaming systems. Have a look at Chaosium, or Fighting Fantasy, or Tunnels and Trolls to get started. If you made most of the changes here, you might recreate Fighting Fantasy. It's great too. The sacred cow that desperately needs slaughtered is D&D is such a flexible system that you can use it to play any kind of game. That won't happen though. It would require WotC to tell would-be customers to take their business elsewhere. 30-foot movement speed being all you ever get naturally, or plus or minus 5. Honestly, having improved movement does wonders for high-level martials. There are other issues, but the difference that higher speed and better movement options does for them is letting them engage and do damage to more mobile targets, which is huge. From my experience, people who make, say, a barbarian mainly want to hit shit. Utility's nice, of course, yay utility, but being unable to hit the shit you want is way more frustrating. Spell slots as the primary and dominant method of casting. Cantrips help ameliorate this issue, mind you, but there should be more well-developed modes of casting such as mana, magic points, hit point trading for spell use, ability checks for more at-will spell uses, etc. Spell slots are not a bad system, but they do not need to be used for literally every kind of magic user. Sorcerers, clerics, psionics, warlocks, etc. could all feel more flavorful, interesting, and balanced with more variety in foundational spellcasting systems. Spell slots also feel like this half measure of the original Vancian magic that could be improved even more to make it feel more versatile and interesting. Ability score and ability modifier both existing. It's redundant and confusing. We do not need both. And the only reason to have both in 5th edition, continue to have both in 1 D&D, and likely have both in whatever follows is tradition. It is dead weight. Cut it loose. It's really annoying how even and odd scores exist, but odd scores do nothing with the exception of like 2 mechanics, jumping and carrying using the strength score, and multi-classing for some goofy reason. I'd be fine with either getting rid of the ability scores or the ability modifiers as they are, or even making both useful, but they're a waste of ink as they stand now. Hey everybody, Brian Von VA checking in after the vid. Please make sure to leave a like, subscribe, ring that bell, and of course, if you have something in D&D or any other real TTRPG that you think just needs culled, curbed, or killed, let us know in the comments below. Until then, we love you all, please be safe, happy, and healthy, and we'll see you next time. Bye for now.